From the north side of the San Francisco Bay to Singapore, welcome to UrbanEx Real Talk Fitness Radio with your host, business owner, lecturer, author, master trainer, Tiaja. With over 30 years of experience in the health and fitness industry, he will challenge the fitness between your ears. So prepare your mind, body, and soul for the revolution of self-care, the evolution of fit, with real talk about real people, real health, real fitness, and the real deal behind our present illness culture. Real talk every time, all the time. Get weekly insights on how to shift your thinking, emoting, eating, training, hydrating, goal setting, and resting for you, the everyday athlete. You can cheat your fitness, but you can't steal your health flow. It's Tuesday, 9 a.m. Let's flow.
Welcome to UrbanEx Real Talk Fitness Radio News, where we don't bring you just the trending news, but also the news you need to know to assist you in making healthier choices for yourself in the hopes that you will be successful in navigating the often murky waters of the health and fitness industry. I'm your host, Tiaja. We'll be back next week, but as promised, each month, we're going to veer off the beaten path and offer you something just a little bit different. Today, I'm going to touch on several stories. It is Tuesday, June 25th, 2019. Let's flow. In our first story, the Trump administration substantially cut federal funding for human fetal tissue research this week, a move that anti-abortion activists applauded, but many scientists found troublesome. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services announced Wednesday that government scientists at the National Institutes of Health would no longer be allowed to conduct research using human fetal tissue. Ongoing external fetal tissue projects receiving NIH funding would be allowed to continue, the agency said, but new applications of grant renewals from universities and research institutions would now be subject to an ethics advisory board review. Now, human fetal tissue, which is obtained through elective abortions, has been used in research for decades, including in the development of certain vaccines, but it has also been the subject of considerable controversy. But why do scientists use human fetal tissue for research? Well, take a listen.
The human body is composed of hundreds of types of cells. Stem cells are unique in that they can repair damaged organs and rebuild vital tissues in the body. They accomplish this by multiplying and transforming into cells that are needed for repair.
Well, there are many different types of stem cells, but there are two main categories, adult or embryonic stem cells. An embryonic stem cell line begins with an embryo, and those embryos are usually donated by a couple who's gone through fertility treatment and has completed their family.
This fertility treatment is called in vitro fertilization, or IVF, which refers to the creation of fertilized embryos outside of a woman's womb.
We then grow those embryos out to what's called the blastocyst stage. The inner cells inside this embryo can be removed and can be plated out, cultured, and turned into a stem cell line.
The embryonic blastocyst can also be implanted into a woman's uterus to grow into a full-term child.
So in order to form embryonic stem cells, you must destroy the embryo. That's the only way that it can be done using those IVF embryos.
The other type of stem cells that researchers are working with are called adult stem cells.
By adult, we mean that they already exist in our body in different organ systems, and they're there to repair damage and aging to that body throughout our lifetime. And virtually every organ appears to have a stem cell compartment.
The main difference between the two types of stem cells is that the embryonic stem cells have the property that they can divide indefinitely. Adult stem cells can't do that. You grow them in the laboratory for a while and then they stop growing. The other property that the embryonic stem cells have that the adult stem cells don't is that they can turn into any tissue of the body, whereas adult stem cells turn into the tissue that they were derived from.
The ability to turn into any tissue of the body is called pluripotency, which makes the embryonic stem cell highly adaptable in fighting degenerative diseases. Despite its scientific progress, ethical concerns about embryonic stem cell research have been voiced by doctors, scientists, women's groups, and ethicists.
In embryonic stem cell research, what makes the controversy so intense is that a nascent human being, that is an embryo at the 1-week stage, is being destroyed for its body parts, if you will, its stem cells. It is to use nascent human life as a corn crop ripe for the harvest.
Well, there are probably as many definitions of human life as there are scientists. But one thing I'm absolutely convinced of is that an embryo in a dish is not a human life, and it's certainly not a person.
Well, I don't think that's a scientific statement. I think it is a human organismal life in the dish. And it's a common tool of rhetoric in political arguments to win by redefining the terms. I don't think either side should do that.
Well, the scientific definition of human life, I think within the context of what we're talking about is that human life begins at conception.
It's admittedly very tiny. It's admittedly in its earliest stages of development. And so the question is, does it have the moral worth that we assign to later stages of human development?
Fertility treatments are now so effective that the vast majority of time we have excess embryos. And the question is, what do we do with those embryos? Do we pick them up? Do we just throw them in the trash? Do we discard them? Or do we find something useful to do with them?
The issue isn't about leftover embryos. The issue is whether or not we can use human life instrumentally.
To those individuals who may have moral issues with human embryonic stem cell research, I would advise, I would plead education.
Although the value of human life and the issue of personhood are an ongoing concern in the debate over stem cell research, it would be limiting to reduce that debate to a pro-life versus pro-choice battle. The reality is that some doctors, scientists, and ethicists of both pro-life and pro-choice persuasions continue to be concerned about the consequences of stem cell research. One of those consequences is women's health. Normally, a woman's ovaries release 1 or 2 eggs a month. In order to extract many eggs for in vitro fertilization, or IVF, doctors use what is known as ovarian hyperstimulation, injecting powerful fertility drugs into a woman's body to force it to produce a dozen or more eggs at a time. The eggs are then extracted from the uterus using a needle.
Nowhere in the world has anybody done any research on the aftermath of the drugs on women who've been donating, or often it's not donating, selling eggs across any of the countries that are involved in this kind of trade. They become forgotten.
I'm actually just back from London, where I attended an international conference on natural cycle minimal stimulation IVF. And for 2 days I listened to world-class fertility specialists, embryologists from all over the world talking about how dangerous the drugs are that they use on women for fertility treatments.
We don't know the long-term effects of taking these medications yet.
So in terms of, are there long-term studies on these drugs? No.
One of the dangerous conditions that doctors are becoming increasingly aware of is ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, or OHSS.
So it's a syndrome, OHSS, that's the result of the ovary being kind of put into hyperdrive. It's producing a lot of eggs. And when you do that to a person's body, it also produces other changes in the body, which can actually, in some people, can have the risk of death.
Ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome is a reality. I was the person who contacted the mother of a girl who died from it. It's a serious consideration, and if you go on to the websites of IVF clinics around the world, you find that it's acknowledged as a risk.
Well, the list of dangers for egg retrieval in women would include the OHSS, which would, in itself, put a woman at risk for pulmonary complications, fluid imbalances, stroke, death. Besides OHSS, there's also the risk of clotting issues that can occur from the drugs alone. You can also have, in the future, you can have adhesion, so you can have problems getting pregnant or difficulties in the future. And I think that in terms of the women who are considering voluntarily or even for money donating their eggs, they need to be aware that this is not a procedure that is not without risk. And one of those risks, unfortunately, is death.
In our second story, if you're one of the millions of Americans with an office job and have yet to jump aboard the standing desk bandwagon, then you're likely used to spending the bulk of your day sitting down, and as you might expect, spending 8+ hours moving little more than your fingers as you type doesn't exactly do wonders for your overall health, especially over the course of decades spanning the career of your job. But what exactly makes all those hours slumped in your desk chair so harmful? From muscle pain to breathing problems, listen up and discover what happens to your body when you sit all day.
Joe, do you sit all day?
Of course I sit all day. What, am I gonna have a standing desk like a psycho?
Sitting all day might actually be killing you. I guess I'll have to science the shit out of this one myself.
Time to do a little sitting.
Joe, what are you doing?
Sitting down feels great. Sitting totally rocks.
Yeah, that's not a good thing.
So why don't you explain to me these alleged health effects that I might experience from sitting all day?
Numerous studies over the years have linked too much sitting to a greater risk of obesity, higher blood pressure, abnormal cholesterol levels, or even ultimately premature death due to stroke, cardiovascular disease, or certain types of cancer.
Death? I hate death! Oh, sitting! Now, maybe I haven't done as much research as you have, but standing all day is bullshit. I've had jobs where I've stood all day, and that really is uncomfortable too.
I mean, it's not that much better for you. So,
I knew it.
One of the differences between standing and sitting is that standing burns a few more calories. One study showed that it was about 9 more calories per hour. Multiply that by an 8-hour day, that's about 72 calories, or a quarter of a candy bar, which is not very much. As far as your overall health is concerned, standing in one place for extended periods of time versus sitting in one place for that same amount of time isn't going to make much of a difference.
Just by virtue of sitting in this building, I'm going to get some sort of cancer or have a stroke?
Well, not necessarily.
The working stiff can't win in this country, am I right?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
So there are ways that you can combat this. One message is clear. Movement is the key. Experts at Cornell suggest getting up and moving every 20 to 30 minutes. It can be as simple as getting up and walking around for a few minutes, but the key here is getting your muscles working and getting that blood flowing.
Oh, I like this. Like, so be healthy, like get up, go to the kitchen, grab a donut,
No.
Get a soda.
No.
All right. So at this point in the video, I think we can both agree exercise totally sucks. But hypothetically speaking, if I wanted to exercise to offset the damages done by glorious sitting, what would I have to do?
150 minutes of moderate exercise a week has been shown to reduce your overall mortality rate by 7% compared to if you were just sitting around all day and not exercising at all. Now, if you increase that amount of time to 300 minutes of moderate exercise a week, that can actually reduce your overall mortality rate by 14%. Not bad. Joe!
What?
What are you doing? I just explained to you why sitting is so bad.
Yeah, I know. I'm taking a break.
No, that's not what I said. You need to be moving with your break, you know? So sitting all day, it's going to be bad for your heart, it's bad for your brain, it's bad for your arteries, it's bad for your overall health. It will make you die sooner. Get the f*** up!
All right. Jeez, starting to sound like me.
Now move.
Okay, all right. I'm moving. I'm leaving. Goodbye.
Bye, Joe.
See ya. Bye, guys.
And finally, here's a question many of our listeners find themselves pondering. How should I train my muscles? Before we answer that question, it might help you to better understand what your muscles are comprised of. Until recently, scientists thought there were 3 types of muscle fibers: type 1, slow twitch, type 2A, fast twitch, and type 2X, super fast twitch. They also thought the distribution was fixed. So for example, a marathon champion with 90% slow twitch fibers in his thighs was born with this inherent advantage, same as a world-class sprinter with a predominance of fast twitch fibers. With new innovations, however, faster separation techniques and more powerful microscopes, they are now learning that muscle fibers are actually a continuum of 6 types, ranging from slow to fast. Even the word type is outdated. The new nomenclature is myosin heavy chain, or MHC. What I find extremely fascinating, however, is when you commit to a lifting program, many of those hybrids will transition to fast twitch. It starts within weeks, and in the first year of training, as many as 20% could change into fast twitch fibers, increasing your strength and power. With endurance training, the hybrids go to the other direction, towards MHC1. There's no right or wrong or even ideal mix of fiber types. Your muscle cells adapt to what you need them to do. Conversely, if you work out for a while and then stop, your well-trained, slow and fast twitch fibers quickly revert to hybrids, in effect, going to the sidelines to wait for their next assignment. Here's more on the remarkable intelligence of the human body.
What all of this is saying to you is that changing up your training is absolutely vital. Change equals adaptation. And Christian Thibodeau, who focused on Olympic lifting, explosive fast movements, by then having a mesocycle of controlled repetitions, volume training, time under tension, repeated contractions, he was able to build significant muscle because he changed the stimulus and his training methods supplemented each other. He worked on multiple muscle fibers. So this video is about muscle fibers and how you can train them. And muscle fibers, for me, are the most interesting aspect of training and physiology. And I need to start by saying that this video is a communication of ideas. In no way will it even scratch the surface of the incredible work that people like Dr. Galpin are doing and strength and conditioning coaches who dedicate their careers to training their athletes and working on muscle fibers as part of their programs. And so within a muscle, we have many motor units. A motor unit is a motor neuron and the muscle fibers that it innervates, that it activates. And within a motor unit, all the muscle fibers will be of the same type. However, within a muscle, there will be several motor units, and therefore you will have different muscle fiber types in every single muscle in your body. So every muscle in your body will have a different ratio of type 1 to type 2 fibers. And when a motor unit is activated, all of the muscle fibers within that motor unit will be activated. They will all be online as part of the movement. So essentially we have two types of muscle fiber, although we have hybrids that I will get onto later. And so type 1 fibers are these endurance fibers. They are more fatigue resistant than other fibers. They are the muscle fibers which are used for prolonged activities. And then we have type 2 fibers. Type 2 fibers are separated into two different categories. We have type 2A fibers. Now these are more powerful, more explosive fibers than type 1. They're activated by the more powerful activities that we place upon them, but they are still oxidative in nature. So this will give you, so these fibers will work over a fairly extended period of time with high intensity. But then we have the type 2X fibers, and these are the ultra fast fibers, the most explosive fibers responsible for those powerful movements. And these are glycolytic in nature, and so they will work and be powerful for a very short period of time, but they get tired very easily. And so we have a continuum of muscle fibers, and it's very important to think of muscle fibers as a continuum. From type 1, the more endurance-based fibers, which are resistant to fatigue and, if you like, last longer, all the way through the type 2A to the type 2X, the most explosive muscle fibers. And the reason that you need to think of it as a continuum is because we also have hybrid muscle fibers. Hybrid fibers are a mixture of type 1 and type 2. And essentially you can think of them as transitioning from one muscle fiber to another muscle fiber type. And so one of your questions may be, can I change my muscle fibers from a type 1 to a type 2? And the scientific response is definitively, yes, you can. Dr. Andy Galpin says that it's undeniable that the muscle fibers change, and he references the work of Anderson 1994. We know that we can change hybrids. However, it is worth noting that the process of changing a hybrid to a type 2 fiber is much more prevalent than changing a hybrid to a type 1 fiber. And most definitely, we do not know how much of a change you can make. We do not know how significant that change is. We don't know what exercise protocol specifically will initiate certain changes. That is not known in the current state of research. And much of the confusion around this comes from the fact that within the history of scientific exploration of muscle fibers, the tools used for measurement were nowhere near as accurate as they are now. And interestingly enough, for sedentary people who do not train, who do not have structured training, They will develop a larger amount of hybrid fibers because they are not training their muscle for any specific function. There is no specificity to the stimulation that they are putting on their body. If we know that type 2 fibers are associated with power activities, then the more we train power activities, the more we're stimulating these type 2 fibers, and vice versa with the type 1 fibers. Now, if you do nothing, you're not stimulating either end of the spectrum, and actually you're going to have a greater number of hybrid fibers. No muscle within your body will be 100% fast twitch or slow twitch. Every single muscle within your body will have a mixture of the two, but you will be more dominant in one than the other. Now, this is very inherent and genetic, and so some of us are born more powerful and some of us are born more endurance-based. Some of us have a higher dominance of type 2 fibers. We are better at more powerful activities. You're sprinting, power punching. I'm one of those people. And some of us are inherently more type 1 dominant, and they will be better endurance type activities, long distance running, volume punching, etc. And so very quickly, you may identify whether, generally speaking, you are more type 1 or type 2 dominant. Also, it's important to state that type 2 fibers have the greatest potential for growth, for hypertrophy. And Dr. Galpin explains this by stating that they induce hypertrophy due to the higher concentration of them, the fact they're more sensitive, and also the nature of fast twitch muscle fibers, which are there essentially to increase in size. And essentially, none of us are going to get officially tested. It's a rare, expensive, and maybe painful process. It's just not realistic. And one way that you can try and test your muscle fiber ratios and dominance is the 80% test, where you are essentially putting 80% of a 1 rep max for a certain exercise on the bar, and then you're performing as many reps as you can. I think you will be able to understand where you fit into the spectrum, and this will translate into the gym. But having said that, some muscles within your body will naturally, let's say, be more dominant in one muscle fiber type than another, because of their function in the body. The larger muscle groups that are used for more powerful movements, such as the hamstrings for sprinting, will have a higher percentage of type 2 fibers within your body than, for example, the soleus within your leg, because that which is used for more endurance-based activities. But your body as a whole will be different to my body in terms of, am I more powerful or more endurance-based than you?
Now here are my 2 cents, and feel free to keep the change. I've always been a huge proponent of science. Still, I get why the idea of using human embryos for stem cells research would warrant controversy. I also understand the incredible potential such research holds for offering alternative treatments, therapies, and cures for many of the diseases that continue to confound the human body, like cancer. The fact is, our bodies do a remarkable job at killing foreign invaders like cancer, or making physiological adjustments to our sedentary or active lifestyles. The purpose of us bringing you the latest research or medical news is to assist you in making current informed decisions regarding your health. I liken our news and shows to an ongoing training for job mastery, or like updating a certification. Your body makes most of the updates it needs as long as you haven't overridden its administrative rights to do so. The only assist your body needs is from the choices you make between your ears. Any scientific research that promises to eradicate or slow down rates of disease is great, but it shouldn't abnegate your or my responsibility to regenerate our brain cells, and thus our entire cellular library, with new, updated, and useful information that promotes more health and an enhanced quality of life. There is truly nothing new under the sun.